What happens when two seasoned business leaders get together? They talk shop, of course. Sit back and listen in as Scott DeLong and Vince Moiso share from their experience around current issues facing executives, entrepreneurs, and their leadership teams. The CEO Podcast starts now.
Hey everybody, Scott DeLong with the CEO Podcast. I'm here with my partner, Vince Moiso. And we are going to be talking about a subject that's near and dear to both of our hearts, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I happen to be in the finishing stages of writing a book specifically on one of these forms of leadership, but we're going to go through all of them. And we're going to be talking about leadership styles and a little bit of history, where things came from and all of that, but what's working and what's not working, and what the new way of looking at the world is going to be. So I'm really excited about doing this episode.
Me too.
Yeah, good. All right. So let's just start off with the way things were, right? Command and control leadership style.
Yeah.
It's actually not a leadership style; it's a management style.
Yeah.
When you think of command and control, you think of things like Zeus. You think of the sergeant in the military, person that's up there and gives orders, and people just comply. They just do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, I immediately think of when you say command and control. We talked briefly about this as our topic today. I immediately think of military.
Yeah.
And I think a chain of command, and I'm sure there are many out there that would argue with me. I think that it's challenging for that to actually translate into business.
Well, but it was what business was.
Effectively.
Right? It was what business was. And if you think about it, it came around in the industrial age. It's been before that, but the industrial age with people like Rockefeller and Carnegie and Vanderbilt, they just made the rules and people followed, and they needed the job so bad that they had to keep the job. Prior to the unionization of America, command and control was really the style. And I'm gonna suggest that we haven't gotten that far away from it. We might have adjusted ourselves a little bit. We haven't got far away from it. Too many leaders today believe that they need to bark orders.
Yeah, I mean, I also think back. It's funny. I started to have flashbacks when I thought of command and control. I was having flashbacks to every sports team I've ever played for since I was 6-7 years old.
Vince Lombardi is Nick Saban, right?
Yeah.
Both of those guys. They set the stage. They make the rules, and people will follow or they'll leave. It's just the way command and control works, and it is very efficient. It works short term. Like if you've got this great leader that knows how to do the business, has been in it for 30 years, and knows all the right things to do, and just tells everybody how to do something, they get it done, right? Or they're afraid not to get it done. Or they're rewarded when they get it done. So that whole carrots and sticks is part of command and control. And we still use a lot of that today. Yeah. Right? We still have incentives and things like that. But I think the world is changing somewhat. And at least I hope it's changing. And I'd like for it to change a little bit faster. In fact, here's what I'm hoping, right? What I'm hoping is, not only with this podcast, but with the book that I'm writing, is that I can get to people that are in my generation, people that grew up with that command and control, and let them know that there is a different way. I mean, we sit around complaining about the millennials all the time. They're lazy, they're this, they're that, they're whatever, right? We raised them, right? We're the ones that raised these people to do that. The other part of that, and I probably said this before in a previous podcast, is that's our workforce. And that's our customer base today too.
It's
so
our future. It's our future leadership.
Is it them that have to change, or is it us that has to change? I'm going to suggest that it's us that needs to change.
It's absolutely us that needs to change.
Yeah.
No, I mean it has to shift. I don't even. I look back. I had some really great coaches. In my athletic career, there's no question, and I really looked up to them. I had some great mentors in that way, and I had some really bad coaches. And I can tell you that the ones that were the worst were the ones that just controlled everything. And you know what? It was as I was on my path to entrepreneurship. When I jumped into business, I wasn't fully aware that I was an entrepreneur. It took several years before I came to that realization. And a lot of that realization came from the fact that I was working in a command and control environment, and I freaking hated it. Yeah. Absolutely despised it. And then when you reach a point, to me, is like when you reach a point to where it's a struggle to wake up and want to be someplace, you're in the wrong place.
Well, you don't. So in that style, and I'm going to say this for most people, you don't wake up and want to be there. You wake up to be there because of the paycheck. Yeah. And that's the only reason you're at work, is for the paycheck. Yeah. And that's why they said, they used to say a lot, work is a 4-letter word. Well, no, it's not.
Doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be.
Find a place that you're going to fit, that you're going to love. In fact, I just got in a conversation with somebody today on LinkedIn, and I was responding to a Carly Fiorina quote, and I challenged a little bit of what she had to say. I agreed with half of it, and the other half I said, but I think there's a better way. And then someone came in, but that's not the way it is, right? And the worker doesn't have any influence. And I said, no, you're wrong. You have influence. And I pointed them back to the Arab Spring. So going into geopolitical stuff as well, right? The dictators had the power until the people took the power back. Yeah. Right? And then chaos erupts and all that. I get that. But the fact of the matter is you have more opportunity to influence than you think you have.
Well, I'd argue, and you brought up millennials, and I would argue that millennials are just awake. They're awake to the fact that they understand what they want. They have a different set of expectations of what their work experience is going to be, and so they're making decisions accordingly. I mean, you can't. It's hard to argue that, where
my point is that we need to quit complaining about it.
Yeah, I've had this conversation with a couple different people because I am a big believer in hard work and putting your head down, getting the experience. I'm a huge believer in that. I think that all has to be a part of it. And sometimes I personally struggle. Admittedly, I struggle with trying to understand. Yet I also respect it. I do respect it because I think like I said, they're just awake to that, because you know what the reality is? I think you said it. There was an era of time where people had to, right? Yeah. And you said it, because they had to work, right? And so when you don't have a choice, then you're going to go work for whatever and whoever and wherever you can, because you have to.
You take the job.
I think the difference is there are a lot of people in positions where they don't have to, right? And so you can take your time and you can choose and you can set your expectations accordingly. There's a lot of things that are going on in the workforce right now. I mean, when you've got places like Portland, I was just reading about this and I was talking to my sister about it, and there are more jobs available in the city of Portland right now than there are people to fill those jobs.
Yep. The reality.
You can pretty much pick and choose.
Sure.
You can be very, very selective with.
So the point to the young people: don't get stuck in a job that you hate the place. Just don't. Right? Yeah. There are other options. And for those of us in the power, the leadership positions right now, or the management positions, I like to separate management and leadership because I think they're different.
They are different.
So many people call themselves leaders and they're just managing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Stephen M.R. Covey, Stephen Covey's son. Mm-hmm. He was also the CEO of Franklin Covey when they merged with the Franklin organization. Mm-hmm. He's writing a book right now that's called Trust and Inspire. And he's actually contrasting command and control leadership to what he's calling trust and inspire leadership. Mm. And maybe that's the evolution past of where I'm going to take this. But I think the ones that we're going to talk about a little bit might be a little bit deeper than his. Yeah. But the point is that a leader, he says this. He says, you manage things, lead people. I love that. Yeah. My own mother told me that years ago. She goes, you're supposed to love people and use things. Love people and use things, not the other way around. I mean, she was hitting me right in the face, right? She was getting in my face about this, but that was what she said. Love people and use things. Covey says that you manage things and lead people. And he believes you lead them through trust, building trust, and inspiring. It's a little deeper than that, and we'll talk a little bit about that, because there's three, what I'm going to say, current leadership styles that are really popular right now, and they're 40 years old too. going to call them new leadership style. So Robert Greenleaf wrote a book about servant leadership back in 1980, I think it was. It was back
I think earlier than that, 78.
78, yeah. And servant leadership is something that people aspire to be. They hear it and they say, yeah, that's great. And yet very few people do that.
Yeah.
And there's some reasons not to, right? If you are just there to serve and nothing else, there's some fallacy in there that people might not respect you, and some of that as well. So the whole concept of servant leadership is that I'm there to serve the people that work for me, provide them the tools, provide them the support. I absolutely get that.
Yeah.
They're not my boss, though, right? The people aren't my boss. So that's the downside of the servant leadership model, is that especially the older generations are thinking things like, well, yeah, I'm not I'm not going to be working for them. They still work for me, and they're not willing to quite give that up yet.
Yeah.
But it's a popular theory and hard to practice.
No, it is, but so I would argue this is, of all the different styles of leadership, when you think about the evolution of leadership, I mean, we are at a point where we have to change. I mean, there's just changes here, and if you're holding on to, an old style of leadership, then you're going to lose
with a
battle.
new style of worker and a new style of customer.
You're going to lose the battle. I mean, you just are. So you have to adapt. That being said, I don't think, like, in having a good understanding of all the different styles of leadership, as we talk about, transformational leadership as an example, servant leadership, the old command and control. We were talking earlier about great man leadership. I think there's an essence of each of these that still hold true. I don't know that you could just adopt one single style.
Nor do I think you should.
And just be all in for that one single style, and it's really going to accomplish all that you think they will.
So when I'm in an emergency or when time is of the essence, command and control is a pretty good style to get done, right? You dial 911. You provide CPR.
Yeah.
You foster everyone else out the building, right? Command and control works for short-term solutions. If there is an emergency or if time is of the essence, absolutely use it as a tool.
Well, if you just think of it from a business perspective, right? So let's say you're in turnaround mode. There's a little bit of command and control that just has to happen. I mean, you can't just totally go away from it. Right. Well, while I don't agree with it as like you said, a long-term, strategy for leadership, I don't think there's a fit for that. There are instances and times when it works and you have to use it.
Crisis. Yeah. Right. I said to somebody the other day, we were talking about leadership things and we got to the command and control piece, and I said, who should be doing command and control leadership? Sergeants. So think about the folks over in Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
You need the sergeants there telling people what they ought to be doing.
Totally.
Right? Where should you be positioned? What should you be shooting at? All
crisis,
that.
Right?
It was crisis mode is a great time to have that. So let's move on to the next one, and that's the transformational. This is the one that I love. I love the transformational leadership because it's an inspiring vision, right? Which is kind of one of the major roles that a leader should be doing is inspiring a shared vision. Not just my vision, but one that all of us can get behind. And I think that's a big part of that. The second part of that is inspirational motivation. So I don't like those words together because I think inspiration and motivation are two different things. I can motivate you, think of carrots and sticks, right? I can motivate you by taking a whip to your back and getting you to pick up the trash.
Yeah, or hanging a carrot out in front of you or whatever.
Providing you a bonus to go take
out
out the trash, right?
Yeah.
What I would hope to do in this new form of leadership, and that's a whole command and control style, but what I hope to do in leadership is inspire people to want to do whatever it is that's necessary, to do their part, to be a part of something bigger than just themselves.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the difference between inspiration and motivation.
I
Inspiration being a transformational leadership style, whereas motivation is an old command and control management technique.
Well, I was just having a conversation last night. I mean, I you know how I feel about this. I think it's an obligation for a leader to develop people, right? To develop human beings. And I believe that if you develop people, you develop somebody into a good human being, the amount of productivity you get from from that person in your business is tenfold compared to what you were talking about,
Sure.
which is that motivation, right? So, I mean, that to me, that's leading. To me, that's inspiring. That's I'm going to develop you as a person. That I'm going to give you skills that go beyond this job. That you're going to be able that bleed out into your life, into your relationships, and then ultimately, you're creating an environment for a person to succeed in life,
Right.
Not just in your business. And I believe that's transformational leadership, and that's an obligation, in my opinion.
Well, certainly, but it does not fit in the command and control model, and here's
doesn't.
why. So, in command and control model, you give the man the fish. You give a person a fish,
Yeah.
right? In the transformational or any of the other new leaderships, whether it's authentic or
Yeah.
servant, you
Yeah.
teach the person to fish,
Yeah.
and then you feed them forever.
for life, right?
So, I like to develop the people. We've talked a lot about that. I'm thinking back now
Well, it's the. Let me just say this because I think you bring up a good point. Language is so important here.
Sure.
And the distinction between motivation and inspiration is very, very important. The distinction between equality and equity, and I'll say this: the distinction when I say development is the distinction between training and development, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting that you don't ever need to motivate somebody or you don't ever need to train somebody on a specific skill set. I'm saying though that the focus needs to be on inspiration and development.
So the old styles can become the new tools.
Right.
It's just one of the arrows in my quiver. It's one of the tools that I'm going to use to be able to get that job done. I think when we're talking about developing people, I like to put it in a process when you got a new hire going on. The model is, for my model, is to first train, then coach, and only after you've coached, then manage. And the manage is a negative aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Performance improvement plans,
Mm-hmm.
things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the training is necessary, and that's old school. We got to do it. They need to know the job function. They also need to know how we do things, the culture of this organization within those job functions, and that's where the coaching starts coming in to play. You can get something done, right? So let's take another comparison: the efficiency, which has always been business 101.
Yeah, of
being
course.
efficient, making that
Of
machine
course.
run longer, faster,
Yeah.
all that, making the people run longer, faster, get more done with less done.
Buzzword, right?
The new buzzword is effectiveness.
Yeah.
So an effectiveness to me brings in efficiency, certainly, but what is the bigger picture? In effectiveness, I think getting the person that is doing that work to be able to understand why they are doing it and looking for ways to do it better. Even if they fail once in a while, it's still the product still gets produced at the end. It may not have been 100% efficient from the dollars and cents of that one product.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm talking about effectiveness, that combines the employee development within that as well. They now know how to do it better themselves because they learned how.
The critical part to that, when I think of the word effectiveness, I think of results, and I think, efficiency is important, but you can be efficient at what you do and not necessarily produce results. But if you want to be effective at what you do, then that means you're results driven. And for me, I'm all about results. So
right.
Results are critical for me in anything that I do. And so I love the word effectiveness. And I was thinking, I was just going to use the example of why language is so important in talking about effectiveness versus just purely talking about efficiency. In the same way that we were talking about training and development. I mean, I'm in the process of promoting somebody, into a leadership role, and the way I talk to her is about development, right? Not training,
right.
because I'm not going to train her.
Right.
To be a leader.
Right.
So that's the language distinction that's so important.
Sure.
You're going to develop a person
right.
into leadership. And it's the same way when you think of efficiency and
there is some
effectiveness.
training involved in that. They have to know how to do whatever it is, whether it's hiring somebody, writing a performance improvement plan,
like the human resource component.
There's some training pieces in that. But that's, again, back to the tool instead of the
I'm
technique.
talking about the esoteric part of being able to work with people, work well with people, and have people follow you and be able to collaborate at a level that
cannot be a leader if there are no followers.
Yeah, For sure.
It's just the way it works.
For sure.
Right? So if you want to use that word leadership, make sure that you're a leader, not just a manager.
Yeah.
There is some places for management stuff, right? So let's do another comparison of
Well,
words.
talk to me about equality and equity. So
Okay.
I mentioned that earlier, and talk to me about that, because I think that's more relevant today than it ever has been.
Yeah. So 30, 40 years ago, maybe even longer now too, but the whole women's rights movement, equality, right? Equality was the word that was used for that movement, and it's carried forward through to others. But the fact of the matter is we don't need equality. What we need is equity. And the difference between those are equality means everybody gets the same thing. Equity means you get what you need. That person over there gets what they need to be successful. This person gets what they need to be successful, and they need to be completely different things. You don't manage everybody on the team the same way.
Right.
Manage them based on their needs, not what you need. Your needs will get taken care of. I believe that, right? If you're doing your job properly, and there is a little bit of accountability thrown in there, and might be in a management word, but I don't think so. I think it's a leadership word as well. I much rather go into equity. Getting people what they need, not everybody gets the same thing.
Well, and it's strange. It's funny. It's funny as you say all of that. I think of a lot of things, but specifically, I last night in a conversation we were talking about the subjectiveness of things like equity, right? And so what you're talking about is the subjective nature of it, where when you talk about equality, right? The word equal is the root of root of that, which means we're the same. But the reality is we're not the same.
We're not.
So what I might need or want out of a business or my business experience, that's equity, right? And that my definition of that's going to be different than your definition of that. My need is going to be different than your need, and therefore equity is important. This is why. So the big movement right now, especially across universities and organizations, is DEI, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's a reason why the word is equity and not diversity, equality, and inclusion, right? Like that. This is why. This is what we're talking about, and this is why I'm saying it's more relevant today than ever. And I love that we've taken language to a whole other level and said, yeah, this is important. This is important that equity is what we move to, because then it's giving people what they want.
And I'm going to take that a step further, and I don't want to get too far to what people are going to say is the left, but I'm going to say equity from your point of view, not necessarily what I think you need.
Sure.
How do I know what you really need, right?
Yeah.
Why don't I ask you?
Yeah.
Right, and that's a difference between a leader and a manager. Ask, not tell. So much more powerful to ask. We were talking about that earlier, right?
Yeah.
With the situation that you're dealing with at work. And rather than tell this person what they need to provide to you, ask them what they think they need to provide to solve this problem.
And I immediately thought of just the compensation conversation. You and I have had this talk before, and it's I've made that mistake so many times where I just assumed what somebody wanted. Yeah. And I come up with this big proposal and I put it in front of them and I'm so excited to present it, and they look at it and their eyes glaze over, and you could read the body language that they're not fully understanding what I put in front of them, nor are they necessarily happy about it.
Did they care about it?
But you know what I missed, which I've learned from, and I've recently done this, is just ask.
Yeah.
So now I sit at the table and go, what's going to make you happy? Like, I don't want to pretend to know if I put together this compensation program for you that it's going to be what you want. So do you mind just sharing me what you want and what would make you happy? And, can we have an open, collaborative conversation around that? It's so amazing, especially recently in multiple conversations that I've had around that exact example, what opens up from that?
So I've got a really good example so as part of a industry board group, and the president of the trade association worked for the board, right? And I was the chairman of this group.
Yeah.
And then there was a lead counsel, that brilliant guy. those guys worked Congress. They just really worked it, and they got some legislation that put millions of dollars into our industry's pockets, millions of dollars. So the board was sitting around trying to decide what they should do to compensate them. Well, let's do this, let's do that, let's give them this much, let's give them that much, and they came up with $250,000 apiece. That's a nice bonus. Well, the fact of the matter is, if those guys were expecting $500,000 or $1 million for the work that they put in, because we got millions on top of that, we're going to piss them off and waste $250,000 a piece. Right? So I'd rather give them nothing and have them mad than waste $250,000. And that was my old command and control style. I even knew it back 20 years ago. That I don't know what's going to make you smile.
No.
Let's go find out. What do you think's fair? What do you think's right? And let your employees talk about it. That doesn't mean they get the final say, right? The business is going to get the final say.
Yeah, you're right.
Right.
No, but having that open conversation, man, it just the door swings wide open, and you'd be surprised at what comes from it. But that, to me, that's leadership at a whole other level. Talk to me a little bit about this concept of compliance versus commitment in leadership. That's interesting to me.
Pretty simple. I can get people to comply.
Yeah.
Carrots and sticks can get people to comply.
Yeah.
They will do it or else. They will do it in case of, for what they might get out of it. That's compliance. Yeah. They're not doing it with any passion, or any love, or any whatever. They're doing it to avoid the punishment or reap the reward.
Yeah.
Compliance.
Yep.
Fine. It's fine. I got the thing done.
Yeah.
Right? It's fine. But commitment, right? That's what I want from my employees, is a commitment, because they believe, they buy it. Talk about inspiration, right? So you inspire for commitment. I had another guy on it was a LinkedIn conversation again that talked about, as soon as people start about culture, we need to stomp that crap down. No, you are absolutely wrong.
Oh my God.
A toxic culture, yes. Stomp that thing down.
Yeah.
But developing a culture where people are committed to the organization,
can be a beautiful
its
thing.
Mission, the people that are in it,
Yeah.
right? Commitment. I didn't say that people are willing to comply with your core values, that they are committed to those core values. Which of those two people do you want working there?
I want the ones that are committed.
And it's up to you to get that, right? And they'll either do it or they won't, if they resonate with you, right? But so you'll do whatever you're going to do to try to inspire people, and it won't hit with everybody.
Well, in fact, so it's funny you just use the word inspire, because that's ultimately, you can put these two together, because if you are truly moving toward that level of leadership, you're going to inspire people to commit to those values and the mission and the vision and the brand purpose and whatever that might be. I immediately thought, again, I saw this and I can't help but go to the sports analogy, right? And reality is if all you get from a team is compliance, then you got a bunch of people that are going through the motions. Yeah. And I don't know.
I ran my route.
I don't know a single team at any level that's ever won a championship by just going through the motions
and getting compliance out of the team. Right?
No. I mean, the best coaches, the best leaders in the world got commitment from people.
Sure.
And commitment has people working at a whole other level. And the productivity is out of control.
So there's a saying that I use. I said all teams are formed out of groups, but not all groups are teams.
Yeah. And
the difference between those two things, I think, are this. One is that they trust each other. You have to be able to trust each other. You ever been on a team where there was lack of trust?
Yeah.
That team sucked, right? Don't even call it a team. Call it the football group, because that team sucked.
Yeah.
If they don't trust each other. But the second is having a shared purpose.
Yeah.
Having a mission that we can all rally around and that we all believe in and that we all like. You will get commitment from the team.
Well, heck, a lot
when
easier
that
to
happens.
commit, right? When there is that shared purpose, when
absolutely.
that trust exists, and you get clarity on the direction that we're going. I mean, you put all those things together, and it's not hard to get commitment.
So let's talk just a little bit about some of the negative aspects of this new form of leadership, because there are some as well. At least there's some perceptions of some negatives. I like to debate and rebut those because I don't think there really is. But one of them is that this concept of culture and transformational leadership and authentic leadership, they create cult-like atmospheres. following a charismatic leader. Now, charisma happens to be part of this, but you're not just a charismatic leader. There's more things that you need to do. So the cult-like atmosphere. I struggle with that a little bit because I'm not a big fan of cults. I think there's a lot of harm that comes in cults. However, when I see that the mission is honorable and worthy, the core values are strong and true, what's wrong with us all thinking alike? I get diversity as well. I want diversity of thought, but I want commitment to the ideas and the ideals of the organization.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a cult. I don't.
No,
because I'm asking for diversity. I'm asking for you to argue with me in debate.
It's just, what the problem with that is that I get that. I think there is that perception, but it's a perception from the outside.
Right.
When you're in the outside looking in and you're not seeking to understand, what does it look like?
Yeah. It can look like a cult.
So it can look like a cult or whatever it is that you want to describe it. It's are you drinking the juice?
Right.
And it's pretty funny. It's like, okay, great, you're in or you're out. You're right. It's funny when you said that. The negative is what I thought of is great. It's not going to be for everybody.
That's right. That's the point.
Because the thing is that
you don't have to stay.
Of this, how much do we talk about accountability?
Yeah.
So, in everything that we're talking about, commitment, effectiveness, equity, inspiration, all of these things that you're
teams instead of groups, right?
all of this.
Yeah.
So what you could create a graph that shows accountability, and you can put all this stuff inside of it, and ultimately, I think there are just a group of people that won't get it.
Right.
They're just not going to get it. They
right.
don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to collaborate at this level. They don't want to be committed. And great, it's not for you.
They'll be happier somewhere else anyway. Mm-hmm. And they won't bring us down. In fact,
and so as a leader, if you're committed to all of these things, then you also have to understand that you may have to change your organizational structure. You might have to put people, they might be in the wrong position. You might have to put people and make hard changes, make difficult decisions. And you might have to bring new people in that are going to be committed, that are going to be effective, and that are going to be inspired to do what you're trying to do.
So I put it a little bit different. You got to be willing to make the changes if they're necessary, not have to make them, willing to make them. Because what I'm suggesting is that to get this commitment and have an inspired group of people, we need to find out what they want as well.
Yeah.
Right. And when people believe that they were part of the decision, that's easier for them to commit to than just comply with.
It's buy-in.
Yeah. So
when you get buy-in, it's an amazing thing. All right. Well, we're running deep on this. I feel like we could keep going. What? From this, as you're speaking to our listeners out there that are either already leaders or aspiring leaders, then what are you going to say? Start doing tomorrow.
Well, let's do it a little bit different. So I'm a big believer in self-reflection as a way to make change, right? To take a look internally. So if you want to go into my website into the tools section, so leadtogoals.com /tools, we have a tool on there that has a lot of traits, that leadership traits, people that have said that these are traits that leaders have, and we have some check marks on what the great man theory says and what the charismatic leader says, what the servant leader does, what the authentic leader and the transformational leader. And then we have a section on there, it's a fillable PDF where you can put check marks on, do you possess that quality or do you not? In fact, I think I've changed it to make it rate yourself 1 through 5 on all these things. Kind of follows through and shows you the things that you could be working on, or the type of leader you are, and the strengths that you should continue to build. So it's a fun little thing that you can do for yourself. Take a look at it, and then keep in mind this though, that I don't believe that there is only one leadership style that works in every situation. And remember, the command and control is going to work great in an emergency and a crisis. So use it when you need to, but you don't want to lead with that. I just don't think in today's world you're going to be successful for very long if you lead with the command and control style.
I agree. I immediately thought it's actually funny. We're very much on the same page today. No surprise with the topic. That being said, I immediately was thinking of personal development. I was thinking you gotta do some self development. I mean, that's the thing to start tomorrow. And I was going to offer, you can go on my website as well. Go to vincemoiso.com, and there's a learning section. And I actually have a document you can download for free. It's a personal SWOT analysis.
Great.
And the O, is for opportunities, right? Opportunities for improvement. So you should write down. It's so powerful to sit there, write down what your strengths are, write down those weaknesses. Opportunities for improvement, and threats, like anything that's out there. What do you need to change, right? What is it tomorrow that you need to change about yourself? But you got to write it down. I mean, if that's all you do, if you haven't really done some self-reflection, you haven't really done a ton of personal development. I mean, if you just start there and start to identify where you have these opportunities for some serious change, and then put yourself into action. Because once you write it down, you're like, wow, and you reflect on, these are the things that I need to do if I truly want to take this next step in my evolution as a leader. Books,
videos, mentors, coaches, all of that, right? That's the kind of action you're talking about.
Yeah, it is.
There's some things you can do yourself because you can see, but there's all kinds of tools out there to do it. I like that write it down thing. I have one of my favorite lines is, writing clarifies thought.
Yeah, it does.
If you're like me right now listening to all this, your mind is swirling, right? It's just going, and it looks like a spider web inside there.
Yeah.
Right? Take those thoughts out, linear thoughts, and just put them on paper. Just put it on paper and get rid of it. Not lose it, but get it out of your mind, out of the spider web, put it on paper. Writing clarifies thought. If you really want to work on self-development, self-improvement, self-reflection, get yourself a journal. Put these things down on paper. Look for the tools, Vince's website, my website. There's a ton of things out there that you can do, but writing this down is important.
Agree. As always, thanks for listening. We appreciate you sticking with us. And check out the ceopodcast.net. We want to hear from you. So give us your feedback. If you got a topic for another episode, we want to hear about it. And until next time, huh?
All right. Cheers.
Thank you for joining us for the CEO Podcast. Please visit us at theceopodcast.net, where you can learn more about our co-hosts and listen to past episodes. If you would like to have a discussion and dive deeper into any topic, there is also an option to contact Scott or Vince to schedule some time with them. Thanks for listening.